No matter how you spin it, Auburn got better this weekend.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Join me as he does every single Monday. It is the Lindsay Crosby. You can find his stuff over at thebarnauburn.com and many other places. Lindsay, we'll talk about how Auburn's special teams got better over the course of the weekend, as well as their running back room and their offensive line. But we got to start things off with Auburn signing Jackson Arnold, the presumed starter going into 2025, the former Oklahoma quarterback. And look, I'm not going to shy away from it. I was negative about, the prospect of signing Jackson Arnold, but the more I look at his upside, the more I'm coming around to it. But even if you could say, hey, this wasn't the ideal or best option for Auburn, it's impossible to say that it's not an upgrade from a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, multiple years of eligibility. He had the pedigree, right, out of high school. And for everything that he may have, struggled with, done well, did not do well at Oklahoma over the 2 seasons he was there, a lot of eyes go into evaluating these players in high school.
Yep.
And, I mean, end of the day, Hugh Freeze is an offensive guy. Venables is not. He's a defensive guy. And so it's realistic to think that there is a chance he can get better under an offensive coach in a much better situation than what you had at Oklahoma with the wide receivers, the offensive line injuries, and all of that stuff. Yeah. It would have been like any quarterback being successful under year one of Hugh, really, where you had to rebuild your offensive line and your wide receiver room wasn't that good. And we saw how well that went. All of those quarterbacks transferred, and I think are all transferring again now.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the scheme impact of this at some point. But just as far as the situation that Jackson Arnold is coming into, I mean, Oklahoma's offensive line, I mean, it was a rotating door of several different guys. They started so many different offensive linemen a year ago. And same with wide receivers. And some of that was because they had to replace some guys from the year prior. And some of that was injury. And obviously, we can't predict injury on this, but we can predict who's going to start the season or at least be on the roster. And Auburn is going to have one of the better wide receiving cores in the conference just because Cam Coleman is part of it, just because Malcolm Simmons is part of it, and Perry Thompson. And we got to assume they're going to add some guys via the portal as well. And you didn't get to say that about Jackson Arnold and Oklahoma going into the season. And they also had to replace all of their offensive linemen going into last year. And we'll talk more about the offensive line in a second with the addition of Xavier Chaplin. But several returning guys, including maybe the best center in the SEC with Connor Lew and the best portal tackle now with Chaplin being a part of this. And once again, we'll talk more about the specifics of that in a second. But just the overall snapshot of the roster, it's not even comparable to what Oklahoma had going into the last season with Jackson Arnold being the guy.
I know we're not really talking too much about injuries, but I did the work and I want to get this through.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oklahoma had 12 different offensive linemen play more than 50 snaps on offense last year.
Crazy. That's a 12. Lot.
Yeah. I mean, they went through 4 different centers. They went through their entire. They played 5 guys at guard, but one of them was not that much. They played 5 different guys at tackle. One of them was only for a game. And so, I mean, they went through a ton of, there was no continuity there, right? And here, you've added some players, but like you said, you get back the best center in the SEC back for another season, which to me, that's the biggest thing. We've all seen what happens when you revolve through centers because of the work they're doing, setting protections.
Sure.
Just even the specifics of the exchange. The quarterback center exchange. So it's more stable here. And then who doesn't want to throw to Cam Coleman? I mean, come on. It's Cam Coleman.
Yeah. And I mean, the talking point has been once Hugh Freeze gets his quarterback, it's all going to make sense. And we'll see. I mean, Jackson Arnold is an incredible athlete. His ceiling is absolutely tremendous. And where he's coming from in Oklahoma, they did not set him up to succeed. Now, the other side of that coin is how much has Auburn done in allowing their guys to succeed through scheme? That's my biggest question on this. But people way smarter than me pointing at the scheme saying this fits Jackson Arnold way better. Well, see, I talked to some folks at Oklahoma and like he would go rogue sometimes with RPO calls and all that. But that could have just been a frustration thing where he threw to a guy who wasn't part of the call and all of that resulted in one of those early season interceptions, which led to him getting benched. And then he gets freed, he gets his job back, and he did a much better job of taking care of the football on the passing aspect of the football games or of the game plans for Oklahoma. So to me, I get the upside, but to act like there's not questions, like I think a lot of people are, I do think is a little rash.
Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect. And really, what player, what situation is going to be perfect? If you get a guy in the transfer portal, it's typically there is a reason that guy is moving on, right? And there's going to be questions with almost every single player. Can they handle a step up in competition if they're a guy who excelled in Group of Five? If they're a touted backup who never got on the field, the question is, why could they not beat out whatever starter? A guy like him who played fine, I wouldn't say he was amazing, but he played fine. Yeah. You're going to have the question of, are the flaws that he showed, are they correctable? And can you fix them in Auburn? I will say on the protection thing, he didn't throw an interception in his last 6 games, 144 pass attempts, no picks. So he didn't throw a pick after he won his job back, which is good. Yeah. Battling through adversity, I guess, would be the storyline you could tie to that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely for the options that were out there. I do feel like this was one of the better choices you could have made, simply because it's easier to see the fit in the offense with how much Auburn does with RPOs, how much they want to use the quarterback's legs and can turn that into a weapon over some of the other options they had.
Yeah, and another angle on that, a narrative that formed when he entered the portal was, they're going to get John Mateer, and so he's running from the competition of that. Well, Mateer hasn't entered the portal yet as we record this Sunday evening. And also just talking to folks who talked to Jackson Arnold while he was on campus, he knew that their new OC, which they got from Washington State, which is what the Mateer tie was, he knew that the scheme was changing, that it wasn't going to be an RPO system anymore, and he knew that's what his strength was. And I do like that. I love the awareness of, I may not be able to succeed in every type of system. This is what I'm best at. Hugh Freeze runs this type of system. Was NIL involved and all that? Sure, 100%.
Oh yeah,
but it was involved in other places too. He trusts this system, and I think that's something that we cannot stress enough or overlook.
The big thing there, I think, was when you said like the awareness to understand this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm comfortable with, and like let's understand he's draft eligible. I think I saw 2027 was what it said on, which feels a little wrong, but that's wrong. This is a player. It was PFF. Blame them. This is a player who I can't imagine you do all the work to be a 5-star quarterback in high school if you don't think one day of getting to the National Football League.
Sure.
And having the awareness and the understanding of I need to find the best situation with a scheme that I'm comfortable in where I can succeed so that I can do that. If he hits his individual goal of going to the league, Auburn will succeed. And I do think it means a lot that he had a lot of options of places he could go. And he said, Hugh Freeze is the guy that's going to get me there. Cam Coleman's the guy that's going to get me there. Harry Thompson and Bryce Kane and Malcolm Simmons are the guys that are going to get me there. And I think that means a lot.
Yeah. And there are other elements there are other guys that Auburn added via the portal this weekend that I want to talk about, but the narrative about Hugh Freeze and Jackson Arnold, everybody's talking about it from the Hugh Freeze perspective. And I want to change the perspective on this and I want to get your thoughts on if we should be thinking this way too. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Lindsay, can you imagine wagering anywhere other than with our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook?
I absolutely could not, because now they have MLB lines up. What else do I need but MLB lines from FanDuel?
Really? You got a Braves one? You got a Braves one handy?
I am willing to bet it is the Braves to win the National League East, despite the fact they haven't actually done a ton in free agency yet.
Okay. All right. Well, hop over to FanDuel. You can see all the MLB lines now. That's news to me. That's very, very exciting. Braves winning it all. I'm telling you right now. Put it all in the Bravos, baby. Hey, right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's, once again, that first $5 bet hits, you win $150 in bonus bets. All of that is at FanDuel.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We'll get to the offensive line situation, which is all of a sudden incredibly better than it was the last time we did a show with the addition of Xavier Chaplin. But to put a bow on the Jackson Arnold conversation, everyone, myself included, is saying, hey, Hugh Freeze, his back is against the wall. Whoever he brings in to start at quarterback this year, like that's who he's trusting with his career. And I think that's true. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. But let's spin this around just for a second. Jackson Arnold, 5-star plus player, it didn't work at Oklahoma. Don't you think he feels a little bit of pressure of saying, man, if it doesn't work in my next stop, what does that mean for me? Like, don't you think that means something, Lindsay, or am I booging too hard?
No, I think you're right. And I think like that's a more eloquent way of saying what I was trying to say was this goes both ways. It's like, yes, Hugh Freeze picked Jackson Arnold. He thinks that's the guy who can best run the offense. But Jackson Arnold also chose Hugh Freeze.
Yes.
I mean, let's not think that this is just solely decided by the money or solely decided by, I don't know. This is all, where his girlfriend goes to school or whatever. I don't know who he's dating, but
all right.
Let's understand that this is a two-way street. And he did the right thing by going where he thinks he can be the most successful, provided that he's not taking a massive difference in NIL to do it, right?
Yeah.
And you have to assume it was at least comparable offers, and he chose the place he best thought could be successful. And that should mean something for as many people who are down on Hugh Freeze or don't think he's the right answer.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of these kids, despite the losing streak we had in the season results, the recruiting class was still really good for the second straight year. The portal class is looking to be really good for the third straight year. Obviously, they all see something in Hugh Freeze that we don't. And maybe at a certain point, we should start trusting these kids that, hey, maybe in fact, Hugh is the right guy. Maybe he can do this.
All right, so the situation that Jackson Arnold comes into got significantly better Sunday evening when offensive tackle Xavier Chaplin, the Virginia Tech tackle, standout, rated the #1 player in the portal pretty much everywhere that you look when it comes to the offensive tackle position, which everybody said, okay, go get a quarterback, go get an offensive tackle. I think they're going to get other offensive linemen as well. But you look at what Xavier Chaplin brings as a day one starter, all of a sudden you feel better about the offensive line because also over the weekend, Dylan Wade confirms that he's coming back for another year. Now, stop me if you've heard this before, because we did this exact same thing when Percy Lewis signed with Auburn. But you get your tackle that allows Dylan Wade to stay at guard. You instantly improve 2 positions there. Connor Lewis coming back. Jeremiah Wright's coming back. Braden Joyner obviously coming back. And he played more than a lot of people expected a year ago. And I thought he looked solid. And then you've also got some guys behind them that are getting older and more experienced over the course of everything. And so now you kind of look at that right tackle spot. Could that be Tyler Johnson? Do they bring in somebody else? Is it Seth Wilfred step up? But the addition of Xavier Chaplin at that tackle spot, I think, starts to clear up and eliminate several questions about the offensive line.
the continuity is big on the offensive line, more so than anywhere else. Like, I'm the guy who talks about the chemistry between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers a ton, and how you have to get the quarterback here before spring so they can do all the stuff together. The offensive line is exponentially more critical and chemistry based than that, because you have to understand what the guys on either side of you are doing. And everybody understands the play, what their assignments are, and what they're supposed to do. So bringing back 3 of your starters, your entire interior, with your 2 guards and your center, and having a returner step up at tackle, combined with a very talented external transfer who gave up a grand total of 2 sacks. And if I have this right, 315 pass rush snaps. Spoiler alert, I think that's pretty good. And it's a lot of continuity, and it has to make you feel good, especially if you're a guy like Jackson Arnold, who just came from a position that played 14 different offensive linemen last year.
Yeah, and there are some. I mean, the way the ACC does schedule, I guess it's the same way like any conference does scheduling now that there's so many teams, you can't play everybody, but not everybody in the ACC played a tough schedule. Virginia Tech played some of the tougher teams. They played Miami. They played Clemson.
Georgia Tech.
I mean, people are really talking up. Georgia Tech. People are talking up Duke lately. But this is a guy who felt the brunt of it. And like you said, he pass blocked for 315 snaps. He blocked the pass rusher on 300 of them, and allowed just 2 sacks, 10 hurries. I mean, an incredible win rate when you talk about him keeping his quarterback protected and safe. They also played at Vanderbilt too, for what that's worth. And so just when you look at what Xavier Chaplin has done, I mean, we talked about this with the quarterback going into like the ideal situation with a quarterback. Don't get a guy who could be good, get a guy who has been good, is good, and has shown that they've been good for multiple seasons. And that's who this guy is. This Chaplin guy, like, he is ready to play at the SEC level day one. And to me, like, this makes the offense better as soon as he officially, steps foot on campus.
His best game last year was his best pass blocking game was against a team that beat Alabama in Vanderbilt to open the year. I mean,
sadly, they beat us too.
Let's not forget Vanderbilt beat Alabama. It's just fun to say. I mean,
it is better to say that Vandy beat Alabama than Vandy beat us. That is true. That is true.
Yeah. 7 total penalties all season, 10 hurries, 2 sacks. Did not give up a quarterback hit, which I assume if you give up a hit, but the sack actually happened, it doesn't count as a hit. Is that how that works? But either way,
I mean, point is, right?
Point is,
you have to hit the quarterback to sack them. Yeah.
19 negative plays all season. And it's like 6'7", 323. He's massive. This is absolutely league size. And I guarantee you, this is someone who you can put him up on the wall and you can say, hey, Auburn put this guy in the NFL. And it's not entirely true, but it'll have a big role of it, showing that he can move into a new situation, move into a tougher level of competition, and still excel. This was literally, I think, the best possible ad you could have made out of the portal outside of a top-tier quarterback.
Yeah, and for folks who are saying, oh, this is the same thing as Percy Lewis, let me explain how it's not. Percy Lewis was graded as a guy who was expected to take that next step. That's why the Senior Bowl was so interested in him early in his tenure at Auburn. The year Percy Lewis played at Mississippi State, right before he came to Auburn, he played 235 pass rushing snaps and allowed 7 pressures in those 235. So, I mean, the ratio there is going to be different, but just the volume of snaps played. The year prior to that, he played 56 snaps at Mississippi State. Then the year prior to him coming to Auburn, played 236. He just played 185 for Auburn last year. But it's just the volume and track record is substantially different.
Yeah. I mean, he was the overall offensive score, the best offensive lineman on Virginia Tech's team. He did it against some really good pass rushers. Georgia Tech had some dudes at end. I think one of them's in the portal now. I mean, this is huge. And I think Auburn fans need to understand, because I think we lose this sometimes. how successful in his now 3 portal classes Hugh Freeze has been at getting very good offensive linemen to come to Auburn. I dare say Auburn's gotten more quality offensive linemen than any other team in the country out of the portal. And you hope to get to the point where you don't have to get portal guys every year.
Yeah, and I actually do think they're close. If they can hold on to everybody, I do think they're close. I mean, they missed on Percy. They missed.
Yeah.
Now, everybody did. NFL folks did. The scout, I mean, nah. But outside of like Gunnar Britton has been great. Dylan Wade's been fine, right?
Yeah.
Like I think he's been better than most. And the fact that you're going to get, I guess, 3 years out of him, like
that's
a
season,
win.
Yeah, that's huge. 2 years of Xavier Miller. He was a starter for you for a while this year.
Yeah, not technically transfer. For some reason, we don't count junior college transfers as transfers, but I don't know why, but we don't. So, but yeah, all in all, outside of Percy Lewis, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. And then, do we see a guy like a transfer guy like Dylan Cinda? Does he take that step? He's kind of been discussed as a 2 deep at guard. So we'll see. All right, Auburn added 2 other guys via the transfer portal, Durell Robinson, Hudson Kaak. I think they can change the game in their respective positions. More on that in just a moment. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by the College Football Playoff. It's that time of year. The College Football Playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team playoff, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate, live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. The Tigers pick up.
Wait.
Yes.
I just want to go back a second. The College Football Playoff is sponsoring your podcast.
It's pretty wild,
can you
right?
imagine
pretty
5
crazy.
years ago when you started this? The College Football Playoff is a sponsor of this very show.
It's pretty freaking crazy. I'll take this opportunity. So we passed 20,000 subscribers. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Incredible. I can't imagine it. Because when we started this thing 5 years ago, we weren't with Locked On yet. Mm-hmm. And it's, I don't know. It's pretty incredible what it's turned into. And it's not us, it's you guys. So watching, listening, thank you for making this what it has been. Super, super cool. Yeah, when we got that note that it's like, hey, here are your reads for next week. Pretty insane. So watch the College Football Playoff, guys. Watch the College Football Playoff. 100%.
Tell them Zac Blackerby sent you.
Yeah, no kidding. Insane. All right, so Durell Robinson, the UConn running back, as soon as he entered the portal, I've got a few folks up at that cover UConn. They say, hey, Auburn's the buzz here. Okay, cool, whatever. And at that time, we were so focused on Ahmad Hardy, the ULM back, who I've said pretty consistently, he's my favorite player in the portal. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, just never really came to fruition. I don't know if Auburn felt like they didn't have a shot with him, or if it was some sort of scouting, or if the more they looked at Durell, they liked Durell more. I don't know. I don't have that information, but I do have the information that they backed off of Hardy, and then they went all into Durell, and clearly Durell Robinson felt it. I mean, you can kind of tell, and after these guys commit and, Auburn tags them and everything, or sign in this case, you go look at some of this guy's videos that he's posted, like this guy's going to fit in right away. Like this guy screams Auburn fan favorite right from the get-go. And he's a good player too. Like, let's don't let that, that point is kind of be dropped here. But Durell Robinson, I think, is going to be a fan favorite, Lindsay.
107 carries, 731 yards. It's like 6.8 a carry. Should have had a little bit more, but it's fine. 8 touchdowns, 1 fumble, picked up 39 first downs, which I think is huge. Off of 107 carries, 39 of them were for first downs. I mean, 6'1", 200. So he's that interesting blend of size where it feels like he can do some of everything, right? Like he can run with some power. He can be a little bit shifty. He's got the height to, make a difference in the passing game. Targeted 19 times, picked up 14 of those for 75 yards. Like there's a lot of flexibility you can do here. And I think it's something where you now have a little bit more experience in the room. You have a couple guys who, in Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb, who have been here for a couple seasons, but have never been the guy.
Yeah.
Now you have another guy he's had, 148 college carries to add to the room. Nothing but a good thing.
Yeah. And this guy would be the age of last year's class where you didn't take a running back. So if nobody leaves, which
you're right on schedule.
Yeah. You've got, your pecking order of Damari, Jeremiah, Durell, and now Alvin Henderson. And so to me, it's like, I like Durell Robinson. Now hindsight's 2020, but I like Durell Robinson more than any of the backs that we were kind of battling for in last year's class. I think he's going to be a great fit. I'm super excited about this guy. The size is interesting because he plays like he's smaller than he is. 6'1", 200, not a bruiser of a back, but the way he plays is he plays like he's an more elusive guy, like a little bit smaller than he actually is. I am curious to see how quickly that could translate to the SEC, but former 4-star guy, this isn't a guy who was overlooked and went to UConn. He wanted to go to UConn. He was a 4-star kid. And then ultimately, I don't know. I guess maybe he felt like he was too good for UConn because he probably is. No offense to UConn football. UConn basketball, 100%. UConn football, get this guy in the SEC, 100%. So Durell Robinson, very, very exciting. And then Hudson Kaak, the punter from Oklahoma State. I'm actually about to record with him as soon as we get done. I'm texting with him, so expect that later today. But excited to get to know him a little bit. But I mean, it's been discussed over and over and over on this show, how questionable special teams has been throughout the season. It's been reported that Auburn is not pursuing a kicker this transfer portal window. And so they add Hudson from Oklahoma State to address the punting situation. I think that makes a ton of sense. And so we'll see, surely that means they feel better about McPherson's recovery. You got to think, or Towns McGoo's development. We'll see. We'll see what happens. You could sell me on both, by the way, because Towns isn't an inherently ungifted kicker. I think he's a young kid who had to play a little bit earlier than he probably expected.
He got the yips.
Yeah. I mean,
happens in baseball all the time, right?
Yeah. Now, obviously, we all hope Alex McPherson gets healthy for multiple reasons, but one, because he's a human and we care about him. And then two, is he's an outstanding kicker. So, we'll see how they address it, if they change that at all in the spring portal or if anybody leaves or anything like that. But I think we learned a lot about the future of Auburn special teams, and Hudson is going to be a big part of it. This guy can kick with both legs. He's extremely athletic, very, very gifted. He can run with the DBs, as I've been told. And so be fun to see how we use him.
I think this is the third consecutive Aussie kicker, right? You had Aaron Sippis, you had Oscar Chapman, now Hudson Kaak. The best thing here, you have options everywhere, right? You have options at kicker with your guys. We did sign Navy All-American John Allen McGuire in this 2025 class. So if something were to happen to Hudson, you have another option there. But I feel good. I think you looked good at Oklahoma State. I think they had a little bit of issues with their special teams.
Yeah, they were sad to lose him. And I'm going to kind of get more thoughts on this, but apparently the way punters are used didn't match his skill set as a punter. So we'll see. But yeah, we'll hopefully drop that conversation either later today or tomorrow. But I'm excited about Hudson for sure. So all in all, Auburn got significantly better this weekend at multiple different key areas. When you look at quarterback, when you look at offensive line, when you look at running back and special teams, what more could you ask for? Are there questions still? Yes, absolutely. But they're better now than they were a week ago. And that's all we can ask for. Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball, dropping the Auburn baseball updates at the Barn Auburn. Also, if you're a Braves fan, bravestoday.com. It's the Braves Today podcast every single weekday.
Yep. Be sure to give Lindsay some love there. He absolutely deserves it. Subscribe over at thebarnauburn.com. Check us out there. Please like the video. Please subscribe here, and we'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.